Locked content behind the Deluxe Edition. Cut enemies from the original Resident Evil 4 making their appearance in the RE4 remake. Krauser making a confirmed appearance in this upcoming remake. Krauser. Oh my god! We've got a doozy of an update for those who have been anticipating this game, so enough chit chat. Let's dive right into the info. Our favorite knife wielder from the original RE4 is making a triumphant return in the remake, as confirmed during the interview GameInformer had with the game's directors, Yasuhiro Ampo and Kazunori Kadoi. Interestingly enough, this boss fight in the remake's development was a pivotal moment for the entire game, as the new knife parrying mechanic was born from it. As discussed in my previous video regarding all the changes coming to RE4 Remake, of which you can view linked in the description, there will be no cinematic QTEs in this upcoming remake. Because the Krauser fight in Resident Evil 4 was based on said QuickTime events, the fight will of course be completely remade from the ground up without the QTEs in mind. It was here when the developers thought of ways to keep the iconic fight included in the game that they settled on the knife parrying mechanic, a mechanic that was deemed so satisfying and essential that they took that parry system from the Krauser fight and implemented it throughout the game. Kadoi explains this sentiment here from the GameInformer interview, with quote, "Once the parry mechanic had been implemented, from that point when I played the original, I found myself wanting to parry in the original as well. That was when I felt things became really interesting," end quote. Although nothing was detailed pertaining to the fight itself and what it would look like, it seems like the parry mechanic was born from this one iconic scene from the original against Jack Krauser. I know the removal of the QuickTime events for this part of the game in general is rather controversial, so I'd like to ask all my fellow RE fans out there, what are your thoughts on this? Are you disappointed with the removal of the QTE scenes for this knife fight? Or are you looking forward to seeing how the developers changed the fight to implement a parry-heavy encounter instead? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now that we are talking about the QTEs being cut, let's now shift our focus and talk about how this remake will see the original enemies from Resident Evil 4 that were cut from the game's release make their way into this remake. From these older pieces of concept art, we can see that we have two enemies that ended up not being put into the original RE4, but instead have made their way into the remake. Let's take a look at the female zealot first. Here in early enemy concept art, we see a female who has tentacles protruding from her arm, and was described as being a female zealot, of which never found its way into the final game. Instead, we only had male zealots to blast through in the original. In what appears to be a female zealot for a brief moment in the remake's story trailer, we can see her clothed similarly to the original concept art, appearing next to Osmond Saddler. This figure's appearance in the game could hint at a potential new enemy to fight in the castle section of the game. The second piece of scrapped enemy concepts from the original game is this particular fellow donning the head of an animal. While this never made its way into the original game, we have something quite similar to it in the remake with this hammer-wielding brute wearing the head of a bull. Although the game's art director, Hirofumi Nakaoka, stated that this enemy was introduced to the remake late into its development, we can see that this original concept art from RE4 could very much have inspired this new brute's introduction to the remake. Fans have also been hoping that scrapped enemy concepts of the original 2002 gameplay demo from the game's Tokyo Game Show debut would return in the remake. To give a brief history and context to the original RE4, this game started very differently from what we ultimately got when the game was released. Instead of the over-the-shoulder third-person action horror game we got in 2005, the game's initial gameplay demo provided us with a camera and gameplay perspective in line with the previous RE titles. In this original demo of Resident Evil 4, as shown here on your screen, we can see that Leon is exploring tight, narrow corridors and coming across all manner of abominations, like these frightening living dolls. Perhaps the most iconic and well-known enemy from this preliminary gameplay demo was the Hookman, an enemy that would emerge from a painting with a chained hook. Just hear how frightening this enemy's sound design is. This part zombie, part ghost was weak to light and would teleport around the environment trying to kill Leon. Now, imagine if this kind of enemy would make its way into Resident Evil 4 Remake. Sign me up! Having a scary enemy like this brought back to life, say in the castle section of the game, would be an incredible moment and be a great nod back to the original ideas surrounding Resident Evil 4. Now, am I crazy for wanting this? I want you to let me know in the comments. Our final piece of news is the interesting discovery that some of the game's Deluxe Edition content will be exclusive to just that version of the game, meaning those who bought the standard edition of the remake will not be able to access this additional content. The content in question is the Resident Evil 4 Treasure Map expansion. This expansion, as of now, cannot be obtained individually and must be bought with the deluxe version of the game, although that could change after the game launches next month. According to the Xbox Store, it seems like certain valuable items will only be made available and likely only discoverable with this Treasure Map expansion. The details of the Treasure Map expansion are as follows. Quote, "With this map, additional treasures will be placed throughout the game. Some of the treasures can only be obtained by this method." End quote. The description goes further below, with quote, "The location of additional treasures can be confirmed in your map in the main story." End quote. Now, this isn't massive extra story content per se, but it has made fans upset hearing that additional treasures will only be made available to those who have the deluxe version of the game. Treasures are a great resource in Resident Evil 4, as you can sell them for a high price, allowing players to stay on top of their weapon upgrades, healing items, ammo, etc. I'm sure that without this treasure map expansion, the game will provide enough treasures throughout the game to make Leon's progression feel very natural. But it is worth noting that the extra treasure via the expansion could definitely make playthroughs feel a bit easier if the treasures handed out are greater, awarding players with more money to spend. It is also worth noting that a few weapons and costumes are available via the Deluxe Edition as well, including the game's original soundtrack. Let me know what your thoughts are about this treasure map expansion in the comments, as I'm curious to hear all your takes on it. If any of this is important to you, then consider getting the Deluxe Edition of the game and whine and complain to Capcom for deciding to lock features like the original soundtrack behind a paywall. As such, for the giveaway that I'm doing regarding Resident Evil 4 Remake, both winners will be receiving the game's deluxe version, ensuring that you won't have to spend even more money to get the most, quote, complete version of the game. Now, if you don't mind mashing that like button to help support me with this video, that would be much appreciated, as these monthly giveaways are only possible because of all you awesome people. Your support is very much appreciated. Go ahead and watch this video here on your screen if you haven't seen my video on all the changes coming to Resident Evil 4 Remake over the original game. Thank you all for the awesome support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace.